What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reviewing and reacting to the draw made for the 2020 Retford World Snooker Championship. Now before we actually get into the predictions, I would love to say a huge amount of gratitude to Barry Hearn and the World Snooker team for getting this even on, 2, maybe 3 months ago. It looked like we were going to have to wait a whole year until the World Championships would be staged again. But it shouldn't be underappreciated the amount of work that's gone on behind the scenes just to make this possible. Obviously, we've had trial runs at the Championship League and also the Tour Championships last month, and it's all enabled us to go forward with the big one. I know for a lot of us this has been an incredibly difficult period, something that we've never really faced in our lifetime before. So for us snooker fans at least, it's a chance to try and forget about our troubles for 17 days and just enjoy snooker again. It's weird it being on in the middle of summer, but it's actually quite nice for me personally, having been working from home for the past few months, to have actually something to keep me company during the long hours of not doing all that much on my laptop. But without further ado, let's go into the draw, and kick-starting the tournament as always is the defending champion Judd Trump. Following on from his outstanding performance to win the world title last year, he's had a phenomenal season, and I think it would go without saying this has been the best ever season from a first-time defending world champion, potentially the best ever season from anyone at any time. He's won a record-breaking 6 ranking titles, along with a final appearance at the Champion of Champions. Potentially the only small blips for him came at the first 2 Triple Crown events. He lost the last 32 of the UK Championship, and then also the first round of the Masters. I think many people have tipped him to become the first player to break the Crucible curse, and that's definitely a phrase that we're going to hear a lot over the coming 17 days. And for me personally, I think if it wasn't for lockdown, I had a really strong suspicion he might have done it. But now it's all a bit up in the air. His form at the Tour Championship and also the Championships League wasn't at the standard that he was prior to lockdown, and that's obviously completely understandable. So it'll be interesting to see where he can reach in terms of standards. He's also on 98 centuries for the season, and very close to emulating what Neil Robertson done 6 years ago now, and he could have the chance to even beat that. He'll have to make 6 centuries to become a record-breaking century maker in a single season, and he does seem to be knocking records out of the park. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, if he can get on a really good run. The first round, though, for defending champions, particularly first-time defending champions, can be a bit of a minefield. I can recall Steve Davis, Neil Robertson and Stuart Bingham all losing their openers as defending champions. And it's not really the easiest of draws here for Judd. Tom, well, he can be a bit of a scoring machine, and he has actually made 2 maximums already this season. Perhaps a surprising statistic, though, is that this is going to be his 4th Crucible appearance from 20 attempts. Seems kind of criminal for a player who is obviously talented, but I think something that does often let him down is quite a shaky temperament, and the longer formatted matches will definitely exploit that. They have met once before at the World Championships. That was 6 years ago in the first round, and Judd won 10-4. I do think Judd will understandably be quite nervy. However, I don't think Tom will be able to consistently punish mistakes enough over a 2-session match, and for that reason I would favour a 10-6 win here for Judd. Going on to match 2, and we've got Jan Bingtao versus the first debutant of the draw, Elliot Slezer. This has been another highly impressive season for the 20-year-old. It's seen him enter the top 16 for the first time, and for him to reach that milestone at such a young age really should be commended. And he does have something that separates him from other Chinese prodigies, and that is a really solid safety game. He's perhaps not the heaviest scorer, however he doesn't make many unforced errors, and you can tell he really fancies himself against most of the top players he plays against. impressive season has seen him win his first ranking title in Riga, and that's been followed up with a final appearance at the Players' Championship, as well as further semi-finals at the UK Championship, the Welsh Open and the Snooker Shootout. Potentially it's a bit too early for him to be seen as a genuine challenger for the world title just yet. However, he does have that pedigree of being a banana skin in this draw. Like I say, his first round opponent, Elliott, is making his debut at the Crucible. I think it's fair to say Elliott has become quite a reliable player over the last couple of seasons, and it's definitely great to see him make it to the Crucible. His best tournament this season was at the German Masters, where he reached the quarterfinals, and it has been the kind of season you would expect from someone of his ranking. Quite solid, but nothing really spectacular as of yet. If he doesn't suffer from any first-time nerves, I do think he is capable of giving Jan a good test here. However, it would be hard to see him getting over the line. So my prediction for this one will be a 10-7 win for Jan. Next up we have Stephen Maguire, and it has been a very impressive season for the Scot, which has seen him firmly cement himself within the top 16. He began with a win at the Invitational 6 Reds World Championship, and after that he's gone on to reach the final of the UK Championship, the semi-finals of the Players' Championship, and then finally sealed his first ranking title for 7 years at last month's Tour Championships. It has been a pleasant reminder that the Scot can still deliver his best, having seemed like a player who was never going to win silverware again. The Crucible hasn't always been the happiest of hunting grounds for Stephen though. Despite a quarter-final appearance last year, he can often be susceptible to a first-round exit, particularly when he's a seed, and it may well be possible that this would occur this year as well. His opponent, despite slipping down to 59th in the world, Martin showed us that he can still be a force to be reckoned with after a really good showing at the qualifiers. Not many, including myself, would have given him much of a prayer against Graham Dott in the final round. However, he did take full advantage of a misfiring opponent to seal his place at the Crucible for the 9th time. He has actually been quite a frequent inclusion at the World Championship, but he hasn't got past the first round since 2011. Again, there is no doubt that a seed could fall here, but I have to base my prediction on current form, and I'll have to favour Maguire as a 10-8 winner. Closing the opening course of the draw is Kyren Wilson. Kyren has been considered a world champion in waiting for a few years now, with his style of play seemingly suited to a longer format. This can definitely be supported by looking at his previous 4 appearances, where he has reached the quarterfinals 3 times, with another semi-final appearance 2 years ago. He did get off to a bit of a slow start this season, however a spell of 2 semi-finals and then a runner-up spot just before lockdown has showed glimpses that he may well be finding his feet again. All attention though will be on his opening opponents. The much loved Anthony Hamilton is making his first Crucible appearance since 2008, a quite remarkable statistic for the 49-year-old. After memorably winning his maiden ranking title a few years ago, Anthony is still proving to be a real threat to anyone he faces and is still comfortably within the top 64 of the game. Prior to the draw, I was thinking if Anthony gets drawn against a fast, fluent player, he could have a real chance of grinding them down. However, Kyren will not be too bothered about a potentially safety-dominated match, and I do think the world number 9 will make less mistakes in the balls, which may well determine the outcome. For that reason, I would say a 10-5 win for Kyren Wilson here. Going into quarter number 2, and we've got a draw that would be commonplace about 15 years ago. The Wizards is returning to the Crucible, having reached the last 3 finals, and remarkably losing all 3 of them. I think the form book goes out the window for John when we reach the World Championships, because he is so adept at using his superb all-round game to make his way through the long 17 days. He may well look at the finals against Selby and Williams in particular as missed opportunities to land a 5th world title. However, he had 0 chance last year against an outstanding Judd Trump. In an interview a short while ago, he said he felt the standard of this year's World Championship could be the highest ever, and if those words have come from a newfound confidence in practice, he may well fancy reaching a 4th successive final here. His opponent, Matty Stevens, is another well-adored veteran, making his 17th Crucible appearance. Whilst his chances of winning the big one may well have long disappeared, the Welshman is still a draw many would want to avoid. I did watch the majority of his final qualifier against Ricky Walden, and it's fair to say that he was given plenty of gifts, and that's something you would be surprised to see Higgins presenting here, although Higgins wasn't all that impressive in his last outing at the Tour Championship. It's a bit of a heart versus head on this one, but I would slightly favour Higgins to progress as a 10-7 winner. Up next, and I would suggest that this may well be the hardest draw to call so far, Gilbert has established himself as a real consistent performer over the last 18 months or so. He was agonisingly close to the World Championship final last year, and it was hard not to shed a tear along with him after his narrow semi-final defeat to Higgins. The phrase "a tale of two halves" certainly applies to Dave's season this term, however. The first half was superb, including a run to the English Open final, as well as semi-finals at the Masters and the Scottish Open. Throw in another couple of quarter-finals at the UK Championship and the China Championship, Gilbert was undoubtedly one of the best performers to that point. However, his fortunes quickly turned after the Masters defeats. Perhaps the latest of a long line of close calls has started to take its toll on Gilbert as he hunts for his first piece of silverware. And he certainly will need to regain that early season form from the get-go here, as Mafflin will be no pushover. Other than a semi-final appearance at the Riga Masters, there hasn't been a whole lot to shout about for Kurt this season. I do personally think he is a wonderfully talented player, and do fondly recall his crucible debut 5 years ago, where he looked set to knock out defending champion Mark Selby before just being edged out in a decider. I do think Kurt will need a good start to stand a chance, because he strikes me as the kind of player who needs 2 or 3 frames on the board early before he can really start to settle into a match. I'd like to reference their head-to-heads as an indicator of who's winning this one, but this will be their first pair-up in their professional careers. So I'm going to take a bit of a stab in the dark here and predict our first qualifier to win a match. I'm going to go 10-8 to Kurt Mafflin. We've got another really absorbing tie next here. Jack made his real breakthrough last season, however he hasn't really been able to push on this term. Other than his runner-up spot at the Scottish Open, his season has been littered with last 32 exits, which has been quite frustrating for someone who, similar to Gilbert, is seeking the maiden ranking title. He continues to be a very exciting player to watch, however he is still rough around the edges, and he could have a real uphill task here on his first round. Anthony McGill has been nowhere near where he should be for the past couple of seasons. He made his breakthrough roughly around the same time as Kyren Wilson. However, their careers since then have taken glaringly different routes. A player who should, at the absolute minimum, be in the top 32, found himself ranked 49th in the world before the qualifiers. However, there was evidence at the qualifiers that he could be making strides in the correct direction now. He dropped only 2 frames in 2 matches to make it through to the Crucible, and this will actually be his 6th successive appearance at the main stage, so he will be no stranger to his surroundings. Having already beaten the likes of Maguire, Selby and Murphy, I wouldn't be surprised to see Lazarski's name added to that list, and I think McGill is going to get over the line here, a 10-6 winner. Finalising the top half of the draw will be Mark Allen. The Pistons set to finish the season at a career high ranking of 3rd after another really consistent campaign. His season has consisted of 6 semi-finals and then a final appearance at the Tour Championship, where he was eventually overpowered by Maguire. Of course, Allen will be disappointed that no titles have been won so far. However, I can certainly think of a fair few players that would have enjoyed his season. Unfortunately, when it comes to Allen's World Championship record, there is very little to compliment. His only semi-final appearance came 11 years ago. Since then, he's reached 3 quarterfinals and just 1 since 2012, with a quartet of last 16 exits in that same time as well. It's quite hard to pinpoint exactly what causes this lack of form at the big stage. However, you can be sure that he'll be determined to put it right, and that should happen sooner rather than later, you'd have to expect. Enter debutant number 2, as Jamie Clark will be introduced onto hollowed ground for the first time to face up against the Northern Irishman. Jamie's first battle of the qualifiers was simply maintaining his tour card, and you have to give him every credit for battling his way all the way to the main stages. 3 highly impressive wins against Mitchell Mann, Joe Perry and Sunny Akani are no mean feat, and he has absolutely earned his place among the top 32 here. The only thing you would comment negatively on would be that he didn't score particularly heavy in those 3 qualifier matches, and that may damage his chances here if not corrected. Ultimately, for a debutant, you can only hope that they play well and enjoy the occasion. For me though, I think Alan will comfortably come through a 10-4 winner. We're going to move on to the bottom half of the draw now. And you know what I said about Higgins-Stevens being an outdated matchup? The very same applies here at the top. The 2018 World Champion Mark Williams started his season with a run to the final of the China Championship, eventually losing in the decider to Shaun Murphy. However, it's been a pretty forgettable season since then. The Welshman comes into the tournament ranked 3rd in the world. However, with his winnings from 2 years ago about to come off, he looks set to slide way down the rankings and outside from the top 8. From Twitter, he appears to have been putting in the practice hours for the past few weeks, but you'd be hard pressed to see him having a realistic shot at this year's championship. Trusty Angles is making his 21st Crucible appearance, and as per his recent tweet, this will be the 9th world champion he has faced at the iconic venue. This will also be his first appearance at the Crucible since he reached the semi-finals 4 years ago. Many, including myself, thought Alan's career was starting to dwindle somewhat with a surplus of first and second round exits this season. However, he showed his superior experience against 2 young talents at the qualifiers to comfortably make it here, and this is a draw that has plenty of intrigue. It will be the first meeting between the pair for 6 years, and ironically that was also at the World Championships, with McManus winning 10-8 to qualify for the Crucible. It's a bit of a coin toss this one, but I will side with the ranking and put Williams down as a 10-8 winner. Up next is the current Masters champion Stuart Bingham. His performance at Ali Pali at the turn of the new year was another reminder that ball run can be criminally underrated in my view. Adding this to his current World Championship triumph 5 years ago, he is 2/3 of the way to a career Triple Crown, and he has gone close at the UK multiple times as well. His performances at ranking events haven't been quite on the same level, however, this season, which is why his ranking isn't quite as high as it might be. Encouraging signs for Stuart post-lockdown came at the Experimental Championship League, where he made it through to the final group, so he may not be as rusty as some of his colleagues here. His opening opponent is another debutant who, like Jamie Clarke, deserves huge praise for their efforts last week. His tour card was also on the line, but fine wins over Jimmy Robertson and Rob Milkins secured him his place at the Crucible, which again brought him to tears. These results follow on from wins against the likes of Neil Robertson, Gary Wilson and Ken Doherty at the Championship League, so he seems to be riding a bit of a crest of a wave at the moment. If Bingham is suffering any rustiness, I do think Carty could cause an upset here, but I will side with the Masters champion to get over the line as a 10-7 winner. Up next we've got Ding King, a match that rather rolls off the tongue. 2020 marks the beginning of another year where we posed the question, can Ding finally claim the world title? This will be Ding's 14th attempt at landing snooker's top prize, and he comes in as the defending UK champion. His run to the title in York was long overdue, and it was truly Ding at his very best, compiling 11 centuries to claim the title for the 3rd time. We was after that really hoping Ding could push on, however he then failed to get past the last 16 in any tournament afterwards. Pulling out of the Tour Championship for understandable reasons means we have not seen Ding in action since February, and you therefore have to wonder how competitive he will be over the next couple of weeks. Mark King qualified after a bizarre incident in his last qualifying match, where the referee thought he had conceded a frame, when in actual fact he was just popping out to the toilet. His good performances at the qualifiers polished off a distinctively poor season, with a handful of first-round exits to his name. The head-to-head between these two currently stands at 7-1 to Ding, including a 13-9 win at the 2013 World Championships. I am particularly interested to see how Ding performs here, and I am hoping that his UK Championship form comes out. Either way, I do think he will negotiate this opening hurdle fairly comfortably, and I'll say a 10-5 winner to the Chinese. Up next, well, I think it's fair to say this is probably the tie of the round. Any match with Ronnie involved will be the main event, however this is a real standout tie. The average shot time statistics will show you that these two are the fastest players on the circuit, Ronnie averaging 16.8 seconds per shot, Tepchaya averaging 16.9. This is one not to be missed. We'll start with Ronnie, and this has been a rather subdued season for the Rockets so far. His only silverware came at the Shanghai Masters, and given that we've become accustomed to him lifting trophies left, right and centre, this is quite a meagre return. He also opted to miss the Masters, which was surprising to say the least, and he hasn't reached a final since Northern Ireland last November. With all this said, however, he could potentially be in a better position to challenge for a sixth world title than he has been since his last final in 2014. A fresh Ronnie is usually a better Ronnie, and we know that he thrives on unusual occasions. You just have to look at the fact that he won a world title after taking a year out to prove that. And I do think he could surprise us all here after a disappointing season. Tepe is through to the Crucible for the third year in a row, and blessed, the poor guy could have been handed easier draws. On his debut he faced John Higgins, and last year he lost in a decider against Judd, a match in truth he really should have won. This is going to be another huge test for the Thai player to reach the second round. However, if he wanted any confidence boosters, he has won the only previous meeting with O'Sullivan, which came 6 years ago. Currently ranked 20th, Anu isn't far away from breaking into the top 16, though you feel he will need to improve his general consistency to do so. With regards to a prediction on this one, I do think that Ronnie might actually come through with a bit to spare. That is no disservice to Tepe. I just think a matchup with an equally fast attacking player will suit Ronnie really well, and his opponent will likely make mistakes over a longer distance. I do very much hope it goes a lot closer than this, but I will say a 10-5 win for O'Sullivan. Going on next, and there was a time not so long ago that you would expect Mark Selby to win at least one Triple Crown event every season. The Jester has not reached a Triple Crown final since his 2017 world title, and he has appeared short on confidence for a couple of seasons now. His long reign at the top of the rankings came to an end last year, and he has dropped down to number 7 in the world. Despite winning 2 ranking titles this season, Mark has often looked vulnerable, and he openly admitted that his confidence is short. He also finds himself in a nasty looking section of the draw, so I'll be really interested to see how he plays this year. His opponent is our 4th debutant of the year, Jordan Brown. Prior to the qualifiers, Jordan had won 9 matches all season, although 2 of these came against Dave Gilbert. He also impressed with the victories over Rory McLeod, Hussein Fafai and Ryan Day to make it here, and his fellow countryman Mark Allen was singing his praises on Twitter after doing so. It will definitely be a baptism of fire against a 3-time world champion, and he'll be hoping that Mark will be off colour again. And whilst I do think Mark could struggle, you have to think that experience will be the order of the day here, and I'm going to put 10-6 Selby as my prediction. Going on to Shaun Murphy, and he has easily had his best season of his professional career. He's landed 2 ranking titles in a single campaign for the first time, as well as reaching a further 2 finals. This comes in stark contrast to last season, where he lost more times in the first round than he won, and was sliding down the rankings pretty quickly. Thankfully, that has been corrected this season, and he comes into this year's championships with high hopes of winning his second world title, 15 years after his first triumph. He also incredibly made 6 centuries against Mark Allen at last month's Tour Championship and still lost, so signs are positive that he didn't lose too much momentum over the lockdown. His opponent Naphon Sankang qualifying means that we have 2 Thai representatives in this year's draw. Naphon's first qualification came 3 years ago, where he lost out to Neil Robertson in the first round. Things don't get much easier this year either, and he'll be hoping to get off to a much better start than his last outing, where he was 8-1 down after the first session. I do feel that a ranking of 42 doesn't give Sankan justice. However, he hasn't managed to get past the last 16 of a tournament all season, with a win rate of just 50%. If he can score heavily, then he may have a chance here. However, you do have to feel that Murphy's standards will need to drop for him to do so. Again, you just have to fancy Murphy will be too strong on this occasion. I'm going to put 10-6, the result again in Shaun Murphy's favour. My penultimate matchup features a player horrendously out of form. Currently ranked 15th, Barry Hawkins is set to drop out the top 16 by the end of the season, unless he can go deep over the next couple of weeks. He has won one piece of silverware this season at the Paul Hunter Classic, however he has really struggled since then. Something that Barry Hawkins has become renowned for, however, is coming good at the Crucible. Since 2013, he has reached one final, 4 semi-finals and a further quarter-final. Whilst he has never claimed the big title, that is an unbelievable record, and he will be hoping that this caveat can continue. He will play our final debutant of the year, and the first Swiss player to ever reach the Crucible. Ersenbacher was incredibly impressive in qualifying, beating Chen Feilong, Gary Wilson and Andrew Higginson. He has also beaten the likes of Ali Carter, Stuart Bingham, Mark Allen and Tepchiron Nu this season, highlighting some very obvious potential. If, and it's a big if, Ersenbacher can settle into the Crucible quickly, I could see him being a debutant to make it through to the second round. Hawkins will need to hope that he discovers something at the Crucible as he so often does, but I will predict a slight upset here and put Ersenbacher down to a win in a decider 10-9. The final match for the draw is another standout tie. The world number 2 has had another good campaign, winning 2 ranking titles as well as the Champion of Champions. That final actually against Judd will live long in the memory, and it certainly kick-started Neil's season after a slow start. Things didn't go so well for Robertson after lockdown, however, as he was unable to qualify from his first Championship League group and then lost in the first round of the Tour Championship, though Maguire was pretty flawless against him. This doesn't necessarily bode well for a player whose record at the Crucible is surprisingly poor. He has lost 4 times in the first round and only reached one semi-final since his win a decade ago. For a player who I believe should be a multiple world champion, that is an extremely poor turnaround. And his first round opponent Liang will be a very difficult starter. The Firecracker created some controversy in his 10-9 win over Fergal O'Brien, with replays showing him clearly fouling in the decider, which he did not own up to. Whether this would have had any impact on how the frame turned out or not is hard to say, as he then went on to compile an impressive 1-4-1 break to seal the match, but it has definitely tainted it for him. Not an awful lot has happened for Liang this season, but he did reach the UK quarterfinals and also looked pretty impressive in his opening Championship League group. Make no mistake, an upset could definitely be on the cards here, and Robertson cannot afford a slow start. My main concern for Liang is his cue action doesn't tend to hold up that well under pressure, and if this goes close, which I think it might, Robbo might just be able to handle the pressure a little bit better. I will therefore go for my final prediction as a 10-8 win for Neil Robertson. Well then, that concludes my in-depth analysis of all of this year's 32 players and my 16 predictions for this year's first round. Do let me know in the comments what you think will happen this year. Who's going to win the title? Who's going to be a surprise package? And if you feel confident, go ahead at trying to predict all 16 matches as well. I'd also love to know if this is the kind of content you want to see more of, because I am definitely keen on getting back into YouTube a little bit more. Anyway, I really hope you all enjoy the snooker, and I will see you again very soon.